Welcome to the Sim Racing Expo 2025. Today we're diving deep into the latest innovations in the world of sim racing, from the brand new active pedals by Moza and Simucube to some of the most advanced steering wheels you can get your hands on. But that's not all. We're also pushing every 6 degrees of freedom motion system on the expo floor to their absolute limits, testing how far they can tilt, how fast they can react, and which one truly delivers the best motion experience for 2026. We'll explore their biggest angles, their quickest response times, and most importantly, find out where your money is best invested if you're planning your next big sim rig upgrade. So buckle up, grab your favorite wheel, and let's jump right into the action here at the Sim Racing Expo 2025. Let's start with the Moza M Booster Active Pedal. At present, it's listed around $799 to $999 for the standalone unit. From the first time we used it, one thing stood out. You feel a very nice, soft pedal response at the beginning of the stroke. A gentle feedback region that transitions into the harder end stop when the active mechanism kicks in. It gives you that smooth buildup of resistance as the motor force feedback takes over, and then you reach the firm finish of the pedal travel. That initial soft region makes it feel more refined than simply adding haptic motors to conventional pedals, like the way some add-on modules from other brands attempt to do. The feeling was already very good. However, and this is important, we didn't yet have the time or opportunity to dive deeply into the Moza software and fine-tune all of the settings to find out how close it could come to the Simucube experience. So while the hardware impresses and the feel is excellent, our testing remains preliminary. Now let's talk about the Simucube Active Pedal Pro. The Pro version starts around $1,799 and can go up to several thousand if you want the ultimate version and depending on configuration. We had the chance to test this in detail. An employee walked us through all of the adjustment options for the throttle, brake, and clutch. The software gives full control over every parameter: curves, forces, travel lengths, damping, friction, and you can create or download user profiles tailored for each car and each game. In particular, the clutch is insanely good if you like driving with a manual gearbox. The brake is also top tier. In short, if you want the absolute best and your budget allows it, Simucube is the reference. On the other hand, Moza offers a very compelling alternative at a significantly lower price with a great feel out of the box. We also checked out the latest SRP pedals and the new Fanatec pedals. Both made a really strong impression in terms of build quality and craftsmanship. Super solid materials, precise machining, and just that premium feel you'd expect from high-end gear. The SRP set especially stood out with its engineering quality. The pedal geometry, the resistance system, everything felt incredibly well thought out, even in the short time we had with it. However, since some of these sets were only mounted on tables, we couldn't really push them under full load or test them properly on a rig. And to be fair, our main focus during this event was on active pedal systems, since our current setup already uses pedals with haptic motors, which do a pretty good job on their own. So while SRP and Fanatec both left a great impression in terms of quality and finish, we didn't dive deeper into detailed performance testing this time. While going over the Sim Racing Exhibition 2025, we got to test a lot of new steering wheels, and there were some really interesting highlights worth sharing. Let's start with Simagic. They've introduced a new formula-style steering wheel that comes with a removable digital dash. It's held in place by very strong magnets, no screws, no cables. You can attach it directly to the wheelbase or use it separately with other wheels depending on your setup. It's a really smart design, and during our tests, we found that it actually holds tight enough to work even on motion platforms. That's pretty impressive. Next up was the Cosworth Carbon Wheel MK3, and wow, it feels incredibly sturdy. The entire structure feels like it could handle a real endurance race. The buttons and rotary knobs have excellent tactile feedback, and the shifters perform exactly as expected from a pro-grade wheel. We did notice that one of the shifter paddles got stuck once, but that seemed to come from how tight one of the screws was turned in. Otherwise, the quality was absolutely top-notch. Then there's the Porsche 911 RSR Sim Racing steering wheel, with a proud price tag of around $2,600. Visually, it's a masterpiece. As a Porsche fan myself, I instantly fell in love with how it looks. Every detail screams premium quality. The buttons and rotary dials feel great, and the overall design is stunning. However, when holding it in your hands, it showed quite a bit of flex, even with light pressure. And honestly, for that kind of money, that's a big turnoff. But I am not an expert for real racing steering wheels. Maybe that's how it's supposed to be? Please share your opinion in the comments. We also tried the wheels from Zen's Sim Wheels. They left a solid impression overall. I really liked how the paddles on the back feel. Good feedback, nice resistance, even though I personally didn't love the overall look. That's just personal preference. Now, in my opinion, the BavarianSimTec wheels were the best. When you hold one in your hands, everything just feels right. The craftsmanship is unmatched. The shifter paddles feel crisp and precise. The buttons and rotary knobs are on point, and the design is clean, professional, without looking too flashy or toy-like. Another wheel that caught my attention was the WOWOELK Spectra XR. Technically, it's well built and performs nicely, but I personally didn't like the design. It looked a bit too space-age for my taste. Again, that's totally subjective. When it comes to SimTec wheels, their biggest advantage is customizability. If you like to experiment with different layouts without buying several separate wheels, this system is perfect for that. Still, I wasn't a big fan of the button feel. They just didn't seem as premium as the other high-end brands. And finally, there's Cockpit. They really deserve a mention here. They offer a wide range of wheels that are a great bang for the buck. But just be careful when choosing a model. Some versions have linked shifter paddles, meaning if you pull the right one, the left one moves too. For me, that's a complete no-go. At the end of the day, steering wheels are all about personal preference. What feels amazing for one driver might not suit another. We're not in cooperation with any of these brands. This review is completely my own, honest opinion based on hands-on impressions at the show. If you'd like to support the channel and you're thinking of buying any of the products mentioned here, please consider using the affiliate links in the description. They won't cost you anything extra, but they help me create more content like this in the future. And as always, if you enjoy this video, please give it a quick like and don't forget to subscribe for free so you won't miss out on future uploads. Let me give you some insight into how we tested the different motion systems and where we decided to put our main focus. There were several very different approaches on how motion feedback is translated to the driver. And as always, it really comes down to personal preference and your specific use case to decide what works best for you. Now, as owners of a DOF Reality P3 and a 4-actuator motion system, we're already quite familiar with motion in the key dimensions: pitch, roll, sway for traction loss, and heave. So we do have a good bit of hands-on experience when it comes to evaluating motion platforms. Our goal at this exhibition was to find out whether it makes sense to upgrade to systems that also include the extra surge and sway dimensions, especially sway in the sense of understeering feedback, and to see how much that could actually add to the overall immersion and realism. For that reason, we decided not to test any systems with fewer degrees of freedom, since we already know the limits of 3 or 4 DOF motion from our own setups. I know many people say, when it comes to motion, less is more. And that might be true, and if you mainly race on flat circuits and just want to feel a bit of suspension movement. But for us, the first major factor is always reaction time. If the platform doesn't respond instantly to what happens on screen, even the most advanced hardware won't feel right. The second most important factor is the total travel and the maximum angle in each direction. Because when you're driving a track like the Nürburgring Nordschleife with huge elevation changes, or flying a simulator with dynamic pitch and roll, that additional movement really enhances the experience. And the third key aspect for us is software integration. We've been using FlyPT Mover, SimRacing Studio, and SimHub. All of them have their strengths, but in terms of usability, fine-tuning, and overall feeling, SimHub remains our favorite by far. It just allows such a deep level of customization, and we prefer avoiding third-party tools that don't give you that same control. That's why, for our testing, we mainly focused on 6 degree of freedom platforms and even 7 degree of freedom systems, where the sway axis is split into separate traction loss and understeering channels. Those configurations provide the most complete and realistic experience. Now, I want to share a quick thought on the Actoracer motion systems. Their approach is quite unique, but not in a good way for us. Instead of using a true surge axis, the platform actually moves the entire seat forward under braking. And for us, that's a complete no-go. It just doesn't feel like a real car. The sensation is unnatural and breaks immersion, so unfortunately, we had to rule that one out right away. Now let's jump over to the Gravideck GT35. This beast comes in at around $12,000, and honestly, the system is huge. I mean really huge. I doubt I could ever convince my wife to let me build something like this at home. Still, it's an interesting and very different approach to motion. Instead of a traditional actuator setup, the Gravideck uses a hanging suspension design, which gives it a very distinct feel compared to floor-mounted systems. However, for me personally, it comes with a few deal breakers. First, it requires an enormous amount of space. Second, you're quite limited in terms of monitor size and placement. You can't really position triple screens or ultra-wide monitors the way you might want. The design of the system just limits you a lot if you consider you building a real cockpit setup. This gives you either VR only or a small monitor. So while it's technically impressive and mechanically interesting, for my personal use case, those are KO criteria. Next, let's talk about the systems from Advanced Sim Racing. Their setup looked extremely clean and very well crafted. Beautiful engineering and high-quality finishing all around. The platform is based on D-Box actuators and includes both traction loss and understeering functionality, which on paper sounds fantastic. But in reality, the range of motion is quite limited because of the short actuator travel. The movements felt subtle, precise, yes, but nowhere near what I'd expect from a top-tier full-motion rig at this price point. The person at the exhibition told me it was around $55,000. That's just way beyond what I'd consider reasonable for this level of motion performance. So unfortunately, as clean and premium as it looks, for me, that's another KO criterion. When we arrived at the Vero Motion booth, I instantly had the feeling, this might be the motion system add-on we've been looking for. Everything about their presentation screamed quality. They described themselves as the Porsche of motion systems. And honestly, I can understand why. They're using high-end industrial-grade actuators. And when we put the system through its paces, we noticed something really impressive. Even after intense use, the actuators didn't even get warm. That says a lot about efficiency and build quality, and it definitely underlines their Porsche analogy. Let's talk about the design itself. The lower platform, which handles traction loss, surge, and understeering movement, is probably the flattest and cleanest design I've seen on the market so far. Everything looks refined. Nothing feels bulky or over-engineered. It's clear that a lot of thought went into both functionality and aesthetics. On top of that base platform, you've got 4 additional actuators providing pitch, roll, and heave, making it a 6 degree of freedom system once combined. Depending on configuration, shipping, customs, and taxes, the complete package comes in somewhere between $16,000 and $20,000. It's definitely not cheap. But if you compare it to other high-end motion systems in this range, it feels appropriately priced for what you get. Now I'm going to show you a slightly longer clip in this part of the video so you can take a closer look at how this system behaves in different situations. We didn't just do casual laps. We really wanted to test how it performs both in normal driving conditions and when you push it to the edge. That means we intentionally provoke spins, over and understeering situations, and even simulated a few small accidents, all on purpose, just to see how the system reacts when it's right at its limits. The idea was to understand how fast it responds, how much motion travel there is in each direction, and how consistent it feels when the simulator tries to replicate sudden forces. And to be honest, the overall package left a really solid impression. Everything about it felt premium. The build quality, the quietness of the actuators, and the way the motion blends together. It all just felt cohesive and well-tuned. However, there were still a few things I personally missed. Most notably, I was looking for slightly faster reaction times, especially when it came to traction loss. When you start to slide the rear end in a sim, you want that instant feedback that tells you, okay, you've lost grip, now catch it. Here, the motion lagged behind ever so slightly. It wasn't bad by any means, but for a system in this price range, I would have loved to feel a bit more bite and immediacy. The same goes for understeering and surge. The platform design supports those axes really well, but during the exhibition, the surge travel was limited to just 3 centimeters. That's way too little to give you a proper sense of acceleration or heavy braking forces. So while the base design clearly supports much more movement, we couldn't fully experience that due to the limited setup on site. That's also something to keep in mind if you ever test motion systems at exhibitions. They're often restricted for safety reasons, to avoid shaking the entire booth or damaging displays around them. Since the screens were standing in from the rig and not being attached directly onto it, I get why they limited the surge to only 3 centimeters. To embrace the full potential of a setup like this, you would need to have a screen mounted to it. So we're not judging the Vero Motion's true potential based solely on that setup. Still, from what we saw, this system has a ton of potential. The motion was smooth and consistent, the structure felt incredibly rigid, and the combination of the traction loss platform with the upper actuators just made it feel like a complete, professional-grade simulator. I also really appreciated that the motion never felt jerky or artificial. Even during extreme moments, everything transitioned in a fluid, believable way, which is something that's often hard to get right, especially in hybrid systems. To wrap up my thoughts, the Vero Motion platform is clearly engineered for enthusiasts who care about precision, not just for showy movement or wow effects. If the team manages to fine-tune their motion profiles for quicker traction response and allow a bit more travel in surge and understeering, this could become one of the top contenders in the prosumer motion market. Next up, we took a look at something I honestly didn't expect to see at all: the latest motion platform from Thermaltake. Yes, Thermaltake, the same brand most of us know for PC cases, fans, and coolers, now apparently stepping into the sim racing world. When I first walked up to their booth, I thought, okay, this is interesting. What is Thermaltake doing here? But sure enough, they had a full motion rig on display, built around what looked like a classic Stuart platform design. Unfortunately, there wasn't much technical information available. The representatives at the booth, 2 friendly ladies, tried their best, but most of our deeper questions about the hardware, the actuators, and especially the control software couldn't really be answered. They did mention that the system would likely be priced somewhere between $15,000 and $18,000, which puts it in direct competition with systems like the Vero Motion. That instantly made me curious, because at that price point, you'd expect a really well-tuned and highly capable setup. But when we actually tested it, I have to admit, I came away a little disappointed. The first thing that stood out was that the whole platform felt a bit loose and not quite as dialed in as I had hoped. The movements didn't feel sharp or precise, almost as if the motion curves or PID tuning weren't fully optimized yet. Now, to be fair, that's something that can usually be improved through software calibration and firmware updates. But as it was presented at the exhibition, it just didn't feel on par with other systems in that same price range. Another thing that caught my attention was that the monitor setup wasn't mounted directly onto the moving platform. And that's not uncommon for Stuart-style designs. But it's definitely something to keep in mind, because when the monitor isn't moving with you, your eyes and body can start to sense that disconnect. It's not a huge issue, but it can take away from the immersion if you're used to rigs where the entire setup moves together. When I tried to push the platform to its limits, you could clearly see how it started to lift slightly on its feet, especially when making fast transitions or sudden directional changes. That means for real-world setups, you'd absolutely want to bolt it down to the floor or add substantial weights to each leg to keep the rig from shifting under load. This also raised some questions for me about overall stiffness and structural rigidity. A well-tuned Stuart platform should remain stable even under aggressive movement, so seeing that flex was a bit concerning. From a design perspective, I had really high expectations because a Stuart platform, at least in theory, should deliver extremely accurate and smooth 6-degree motion. But in practice, what we felt at the booth just didn't live up to that potential. The range of motion, the angles and travel in each direction, felt limited. It didn't capture the full range you'd want for proper understeer simulation, traction loss, or surge effects. Instead, everything felt a bit muted, as if the system was holding back or running at a safe exhibition mode. Now again, it's very possible this was a pre-production or demo unit, and that Thermaltake is still working on fine-tuning the software side. But as of now, based on what we were able to test, it feels more like an early-stage concept than a polished motion solution. That said, I do have to give them credit for even entering this space. It's great to see new companies, especially big tech brands, starting to recognize how much potential the sim racing market really has. If Thermaltake continues to develop this system and puts serious effort into motion tuning, there's definitely a foundation here that could turn into something special. But in its current state, if you compare it directly to something like the Vero Motion platform at a similar price, the Thermaltake just can't quite keep up. The Vero feels tighter, more responsive, and much more mature as a complete product. So to sum it up, the Thermaltake Motion Rig is an interesting step into the sim racing world, but it still has some distance to cover before it can compete with the established high-end players. Let's hope they keep developing it, because competition like this can only make the motion sim world even better. Now let's talk about the WOWOELK Stuart platform. WOWOELK is a brand new Chinese developer that showcased their system for the very first time at the expo. When I walked up to their booth, I immediately noticed the massive actuators and the sturdy, industrial-looking platform design. Honestly, my first thought was, this thing looks expensive, maybe even more than the Thermaltake system we just talked about. But then they told me the price, $5,500. Yes, you heard that right. A full 6-degree of freedom Stuart motion platform for about $5,500. That's almost unbelievable at this level. So of course, we had to test it. We jumped into a few different titles, Forza Horizon and Dirt Rally, to see how it performed. And I really wanted this system to be good, especially for that price. Unfortunately, it wasn't quite there yet. Right from the start, the setup felt completely off. The gas and brake pedals were configured from 0 to 1 within just a centimeter of travel. So basically, full throttle or full brake with the tiniest movement. That made it almost impossible to drive smoothly or get any realistic car behavior in either sim. We tried to make adjustments together with the booth owners, and to be fair, they were super friendly and genuinely open to feedback. But the language barrier made things tough. We were using Google Translate on our phones to communicate, and since their tuning software was entirely in Chinese, it was really difficult to figure out what each parameter actually did. Eventually, we managed to make a few small improvements, but overall, the system still felt very jerky and loose. Even when driving in a straight line, the platform kept swaying left and right, almost like balancing on a slack line rather than sitting in a car. It didn't give that stable, connected feeling you want from a proper motion system. Now, some of that could definitely be fixed with better software calibration and more time on setup. But as it was presented at the exhibition, we just couldn't get it to a point where it was truly enjoyable to drive. Another potential concern is software compatibility. If WOWOELK's system can't integrate with SimHub yet, that might be a deal breaker for us personally, because SimHub's fine-tuning options are essential for dialing in realistic motion behavior. And from what we could see, their proprietary software seemed very basic. Still, I want to highlight the positives here. For a brand new company entering this market, WOWOELK is clearly ambitious. They've built a full 6-degree of freedom platform with heavy-duty actuators and solid mechanical design, and they're offering it at a price that's completely unmatched right now. So even though the experience wasn't great this time, I'm genuinely excited to see how this project develops. If they can improve their control software, refine their motion profiles, and add SimHub support, or at least proper translation, this could become a serious disruptor in the motion sim market. For now, it's more of a rough diamond, not quite ready for competition yet, but full of potential at an incredible price point. All right, the next system I want to show you is the PDK from Ark Dynamics. They had two different platforms on display at the exhibition, one configured for GT3 racing and another one specifically tuned for rally. We decided to focus on the rally version because when it comes to testing motion systems, rally is pretty much the ultimate torture test. It's violent, it's unpredictable, and it pushes every axis of a motion rig to its absolute limit. And honestly, this system blew me away. Of all the motion systems we tested during the expo, the PDK from Ark Dynamics impressed me the most, mainly because of its unmatched responsiveness. Now let's talk about the price for a second, because that's another big highlight here. If you get on the early pre-order list, the PDK comes in at around $4,300. That's insanely competitive for what this platform offers. Later, once the official release hits in the second quarter of 2026, the price will go up to about $5,500. Still extremely reasonable considering the specs. Of course, always remember to add VAT, customs, and shipping, which can vary depending on where you live. They also mentioned they're working on a Pro version down the line, which sounds really exciting. Let's get into the technical side for a moment. The PDK platform runs on 6 high-torque, brushless DC motors in a full Stuart Goff configuration. We're talking about 30 kilowatts peak output, so there's plenty of headroom for high-speed motion. What really stands out, though, is the 400 Hz motor control rate combined with a 1 kilohertz control loop. That translates to roughly 1.4 milliseconds of total latency. To put that into perspective, that's faster than the human brain can even register visual change. So in other words, the platform moves almost exactly as your simulator does in real time. This kind of precision isn't just impressive for sim racing. It's actually used in aerospace testing, robotics, and professional training simulators. So the technology behind it is extremely advanced. We had a great chat with the Ark Dynamics team, and I have to say they were super open and passionate about their project. They explained that their goal isn't just to build another high-end motion system, but to create the perfect motion platform for the masses. A system that's open for community upgrades, custom developments, and continuous improvement. That mindset really stood out to me. Now let's talk about how it actually feels when you drive it. The moment I jumped into Dirt Rally, the difference was instantly noticeable. Every bump, every gear shift, every bit of terrain feedback was transmitted with extreme precision and near zero delay. It felt like the car was alive beneath me. In terms of reaction time, none of the other motion systems we tested even came close. It's crisp, it's lightning fast, and it made Dirt Rally feel exactly the way it's supposed to feel. Raw, connected, and intense. But, and there's always a but, that incredible speed and precision also come with a few trade-offs. The first one is obvious. Mounting screens directly to this system is almost impossible. Because of how quickly and sharply it moves, any monitor attached to the platform would probably break within minutes. Even with a reinforced frame, the vibration and acceleration forces are just too high. That means the ideal setup here is to have your monitor or triple screen setup mounted separately, just like Ark Dynamics demonstrated at the exhibition. It works fine for most racing use cases. But if you're into flight simulation or want large angle motion, that separation can become a little immersion breaking. Another limitation right now is the software side. As of today, the system doesn't support SimHub integration, which is a bit of a downside for us since we prefer SimHub for its fine-tuning capabilities and intuitive interface. Currently, the PDK works with FlyPT Mover and Ark Dynamics' own proprietary software, which is still under development. They couldn't show it in full detail at the expo yet, so this part is very much still a work in progress. That being said, the performance we felt was already extremely promising, even with early software. If they manage to polish the user interface and eventually add SimHub support or an open API, this could become one of the most versatile and accessible motion systems on the market. Now, I have to be honest, this system is not for everyone. It's so responsive and so aggressive in motion feedback that it might actually be too much for casual drivers or VR users. In virtual reality, motion compensation algorithms likely won't be able to keep up with that 1.4 millisecond latency, which means you'd experience some disorientation. So if you're a VR racer, this system might not be the best fit at this stage. But if you're racing with a static display setup and you care primarily about the fastest, most accurate motion feedback possible, this thing is absolutely mind-blowing. The price-to-performance ratio is incredible, the mechanical engineering is beautiful, and the response curve feels closer to a real car than anything else we've tried so far. So to sum it all up, the Ark Dynamics PDK platform might just be the most exciting new motion system on the horizon. It's fast, it's precise, it's mechanically impressive. And at its current price, it has the potential to shake up the entire market. If you can live with a few downsides, like no SimHub support, no mounted screens, and no VR optimization yet, then this could very well be the best motion platform for sim racing when it officially launches next year. In short, Ark Dynamics nailed the fundamentals. Now it's all about refining the software and bringing this beast to life for the community. Now, before we come to the end of this video, I want to take you on a quick tour through some of the amazing cockpit views of the real race cars that were on display at the exhibition. As a sim racer, this part was truly special for me because getting a genuine impression of how these cars look and feel from the driver's point of view helps so much when trying to recreate that same level of immersion at home. It's one thing to watch videos or photos, but it's a completely different experience to actually sit inside one of these machines, feel the tight cockpit, the low seating position, and see exactly how the wheel, pedals, and displays are arranged. For anyone who's building their own cockpit setup, like I did for mine, this is pure inspiration. Every little detail you take in helps you optimize your field of view, your seat position, and even the overall ergonomics to make it feel as close as possible to sitting in the real car. One of the absolute highlights for me was sitting inside the real LMP3 car from Rinaldi Racing, and I had the amazing opportunity to meet and talk with trophy champion Thomas Ambiel, who took the time to explain every single detail inside the cockpit, from the steering wheel functions to the pedal box and control layout. That was such an incredible experience, and I really want to thank him for sharing that moment with me. Unfortunately, I didn't have the opportunity to sit in more cars during the event. Time was short and the exhibition was absolutely packed. But still, I wanted to give you an overview of the beautiful machines that were presented there. So in this next section, I'll show you a few quick cockpit shots and interior views so you can get an idea of how these cars look and how the seating positions compare. It's always fascinating to see the different approaches each manufacturer takes in terms of visibility, ergonomics, and driver comfort. And now, as we're wrapping things up, if you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like and dropping a comment about your own experience or thoughts regarding the pedals, wheels, and motion systems we looked at today. It's truly amazing to see how far the sim racing market has come in recent years, not just in hardware quality, but also in how many new people are joining the community, bringing fresh ideas, innovations, and passion. Every year, we're getting closer to that perfect connection between real motorsport and virtual racing, and honestly, that's what makes all of this so exciting. I'm genuinely curious to hear what you think. Which motion system or pedal set impressed you the most, and what you would like to see improved in the next generation of sim racing gear? And if you haven't already, check out the other videos on my channel. There's plenty more to explore. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the exhibition and that it maybe gave you a few new ideas for your own sim racing setup. Have a great day, enjoy your next race, and I'll see you in the next video.